You know, I think I've actually got enough energy for another video tonight. So, we're going to do part 5. Alright, so next we have Maru Mori, the heartbreaking simplicity of ordinary things. Most living things don't need to remind themselves that life is precious. They simply pass the time. An old cat can sit in the window of a bookstore, whiling away the hours as people wander through, blinking calmly, breathing in and out, idly watching a van being unloaded across the street, without thinking too much about anything. And that's alright. It's not such a bad way to live. So much of life is spent this way, in ordinary time. There's no grand struggle, no sacraments, no epiphanies. Just simple domesticity, captured in little images here and there. All the cheap little objects, the jittering rattle of an oscillating fan, a pair of toothbrushes waiting in a cup by the sink. There's a ragged squeal of an old screen door, the dry electronic screech of a receipt being printed, the ambient roar of someone showering upstairs, and the feeling of pulling on a pair of wool socks on a winter morning and peeling them off at the end of the day. These are sensations that pass without a second thought. So much of it is barely worth noting. But in a couple hundred years, this world will turn over to a completely different cast of characters. They won't look back and wonder who won the battles or when. Instead, they'll try to imagine how we live today, how we live day to day, gathering precious artifacts of the world as it once was, in all its heartbreaking little details. They'll look for the doodles left behind in the margins of our textbooks and the dandelions pressed in the pages. They'll try to imagine how our clothes felt on our bodies, what we ate for lunch on a typical day, and what it might have cost. They'll wonder about our superstitions, the weird little memes and phrases and jokes we like to tell, the pop songs we hummed mindlessly to ourselves. They'll try to imagine how it must have felt to stand on a street corner, looking around at the architecture, hearing old cars rumbling by, the smell in the air, what ketchup must have tasted like. We rarely think to hold on to that part of life. We don't build statues of ordinary people. We don't leave behind little plaques to commemorate the milestones of ordinary time. Here on the 25th of March, 1994, some neighbors went out walking their dogs. The children took turns holding the leash. It was a fun afternoon for everyone involved. But it all still happened. All those cheap and disposable experiences are no less real than anything in our history books, no less sacred than anything in our hymnals. Perhaps we should try keeping our eyes open while we pray, and look for the meaning hidden in things right in front of us. In the sound of tic-tacs rattling in a box, the throbbing ache of hiccups, and the punky smell that lingers on your hands after doing the dishes. Each is itself a kind of meditation, a reminder of what is real. We need these silly little things to fill out our lives, even if they don't mean all that much, if only to remind us that the stakes were never all that high in the first place. It's not always life and death. Sometimes it's just life, and that's alright. A tribute to Maru Mori, a friend of Pablo Neruda, whose gift of wool socks inspired his poem, Ode to My Socks. Compare Memento Mori, a poignant reminder of your own mortality, pronounced Maru Mori. So, the way I take this to mean is just the simple things in life. Whether it's enjoying a slice of cheesecake, a cozy sweater, a fuzzy blanket, or anything else that's just rather plain, simple. Actually, I may have gotten the point of that more wrong, but this is more about just the simple pleasures, I suppose, and simple parts of life that we enjoy. Vulture shock. Noun, the nagging sense that no matter how many days you spend exploring a foreign country, you never quite manage to step foot in it. Instead, floating high above the culture like a diver over a reef, too dazzled by its exotic quirks to notice its problems, incomplexities, and banalities, while drawing from the heavy tank of assumptions that you carry on your back wherever you go. From vulture, an animal that hovers high over its prey, plus culture shock, the confusion of having to adjust to a culture different than the one you're used to. Well, I actually don't travel too much outside the country, although I've been to Canada and Hong Kong, China. But you know what? Maybe that comes from a privileged position because there are a lot of people that also don't travel at all, even if I've only been to a couple. But I still don't consider myself as well traveled as many people. So I'm not sure if I've really experienced the feeling of vulture shock. Certainly experienced culture shock, but I've never really considered that maybe the experience I've been having or I am having at a country might be just like a facade or um, just the surface level of the experience that I couldn't hope to imagine the true depth of. I can say for Canada, I guess back when I went, it felt very much like the United States. Felt pretty much the same. Like I wouldn't say there was too much difference, but that could just be because I was a tourist and I visited more towards the border, I guess, where like Nevada Falls. I know it's split between the U.S. and Canada, so maybe the more mixing of the area contributed to that feeling. And of course, I guess when I think about it, I could never have truly known the depth and how it's actually like to live in Hong Kong or China. But I did very much get the feeling that life was very different there. I guess the only way I would be able to fully understand would be to actually live a life there, either for months or years, decades maybe. But there was never a moment where I was just like, wow, I'll never understand this, or like a vulture shock. But maybe I just haven't been to a place that has been had a vastly different living experience than whatever I'm used to. So, who knows? Never say never. Marinus, or Marinus. Noun. The lulling isolation of driving late at night, floating through the void in an otherworldly hum, trailing red jewels in the darkness, your high beams sweeping back and forth like a lighthouse. Separate note, I don't know what it's like with cars nowadays, but I feel like every car, aside from mine, has just a bright spotlight for their headlights because every time I'm driving at night and there's somebody with their lights on behind me, I'm just blinded. And I find out that that's just their normal lights. Their high beams aren't even on. And then when they turn on their high beams, my retinas are just burned. But I think I did read something somewhere online that lights are becoming way more or energy efficient, and they technically still have I think there are regulations for the power of how intense they can be, but it's based off of the power. But since lights are more energy efficient, they do have the same power as lights before. It's just that they're able to be much brighter for the same amount of power. So that's a technology outpacing our regulations and guidelines, I guess. But from Hungarian mare, or mere, where, in which direction, pronounced Marinus. Okay, so Marinus, so Mara. Very cool. I will say now, because I'm not sure when I should have mentioned, but I probably, just in interest of time, because I know we have a lot of words to get through, and I would love to make, well, I would love to make as many videos as I can from a single book. Um, I guess I'll probably I'll try to read a little bit faster, while also still talking about, actually, I still very much want this to be a laid back series, so I'm not going to force myself to read faster, but I will probably not try to comment or make an anecdote on necessarily every word, because my own life experiences are so limited. I guess I'll speak out on the ones that I feel speak to me the most, and I'll leave you guys to contemplate on words that maybe you feel like you relate to. I'd actually love, I just found out for YouTube I have to turn on comments for each individual video, which is a little bit annoying, but I don't know if I can change the default settings for that, but at least for now, I'll try to turn on comments for every video. Yeah, either from now on or all the previous videos I made so far. I would love it if you guys commented on either your favorite word from the video, or a word that spoke to you a lot, or maybe that you want me to talk about in a future video, because I'd be happy to go back even just to go over a word that maybe I didn't give an entry on or speak too much about. And yeah, we'll just make this as fun as it can be, also as relaxing as it can be. It's just me reading, but it's also reading, telling a little bit about my life, and of course, I'd love to hear about your lives too. Justing. Noun. The habit of telling yourself that just one tweak could solve all of your problems. If only you had the right haircut. If only you found the right group of friends. If only you made a little more money. If only he noticed you. If only she loved you back. If only you could find the time. If only you were confident. Which leaves you feeling perpetually on the cusp of a better life, hanging around the top of the slide, waiting for one little push. From just, only, simply, merely. Plus jousting. A sport won by positioning the tip of your lance at just the right spot, at just the right second. Pronounced justing. I think I'm guilty of this. I think it's easy for us to pin all, or if not most, of our problems on like that one thing. Like, man, if this one thing went right or went a certain way, all of our problems would be solved. But I also think that's like a trap to think that way, because no one knows what's going to happen. No one knows what chain of events might otherwise be set into motion if you did something different. So yeah, justing. Balagueride. I think that's how you say that. The awareness that you are not at home in the wilderness. And we have another wonderful little illustration. You see two deer in a little dense area of woods, and a boy standing across from them. It's quite cool. Sometimes you move through the city and feel in your bones how strange and new this all is, the spectacle of modern civilization, just barely older than you are. That's interesting. Yeah, like, I don't even think we've had the internet for too many years. It's cool to think about. With its cramped logic, its rules and grid lines, and rigid justifications for why the world must be the way it is. And there's a part of you that thinks you are not at home here, that still remembers Eden and longs to return. So this just reminds me of the return to monkey meme, if you guys know about that one. But yeah, sometimes you just want to go back to your roots, you know? The story of humanity is a move from the countryside to the big city. But it's happened so fast that our brains are still stuck in the hinterlands. There's a part of you that longs to leave your car idling in traffic, hop the fence, and flee into the forest. To wander for miles through open territory, forced by fate to live in the moment, your eyes glued to the horizon, your ears tuned to the rustling of leaves. To feel the lushness and harshness of the wild, the clarity of eating and killing and growing stronger. Wow. To live off the land without tools or stimulations and experience nature in all its simplicity, raw, indifferent, and ferociously real. And yet, another part of you knows that Eden is a fantasy. Even our oldest symbols of nature are deeply unnatural. The plants we eat are sterile, swollen, unrecognizable to the food chain. Our domesticated animals are mere caricatures of their wild ancestors. The family dog is just another piece of technology designed and bred to serve a purpose. And you too are a domesticated animal, shrouded in synthetic fibers and synthetic thoughts. Even if you wander off to sleep in the woods with a stove and a backpack, everything from the buzzing in your ears to the howling of distance will be trying to tell you, you are not at home here. As much as you want to sink your claws into the dirt, you'll always be floating somewhere above it, trailing clouds of civilization wherever you go. We need to believe in the fall from Eden. We need to believe that we corrupted a place that had always been pure. But maybe all along we had the story backward. Maybe we were the ones who cast out the jungle, who stripped it naked, and tried to teach it good and evil, breaking it down into pieces that served a purpose. We couldn't handle the true state of nature, the overwhelming chaos, the corruption, the mutations, the fluidity of interconnections, and the fecundity of the soil, where nothing is pure, where life and death are intertwined. So we decided to turn away, barricading ourselves in a walled garden. Maybe we were wrong from the start. In the beginning, there was everything. From Scottish Gaelic, Bala Garaid, garden wall, pronounced Bala Garai, or Bala Gara. Bala Gara. Well, I say for most people, they don't really feel at home in the wilderness just because we've enjoyed modern luxuries and been born in a modern society. But everyone has a different normal, so maybe there's uncontacted tribes out there who feel otherwise. I'm not sure if the Sentinelese are technically still uncontacted because I think a missionary a couple of years back tried to make contact with them, but he got killed. But maybe if someone had a chance to speak with them, or maybe if even he had a chance to speak with them, but then again, he probably would know their language, but let's just say hypothetically, he was able to speak with them, then I suppose they would have something different to say about that. That's pretty cool. Foreclearing, a noun, the act of deliberately refusing to learn the scientific explanations of things out of fear that it'll ruin the magic. Turning flower petals into tacky billboards, decoding birdsong into trash talk, diffracting a rainbow back inside its tiny prison. Danish, forklaring, explanation, pronounced foreclearing. So this reminds me of like another word, I think, if I got it right. But let me actually just, I think it's like being a Luddite or like Luddism. I'm not sure if Luddism is a word, so let me just look that up on my computer. Originating in Great Britain during the Industrial Revolution in the first 2 decades of the 19th century, Luddism was a movement arising as a response to poor working conditions in a nascent textile manufacturing business. So yeah, like when I think of like a Luddite, it's like someone that rejects the modern new technology in favor of the old. So I believe another term was like monkey Luddite. So yeah, something along those lines. A Luddite. They don't like technology. So I feel like those words very much be somewhat related. Ne'er be gone. Now, a person who has no idea where their home is, or was, or when they might have left it, which leaves their emotional compass free to swing around wildly as they move from place to place, pulling them everywhere and nowhere all at once, making it that much harder to navigate. From Middle English, nar, nowhere plus begone. I always thought this was like just modern slang, but maybe they were created separately and it just so happened that there was a Middle English nar. Nar. That's funny. Nowhere plus begone. Surrounded. Pronounced nar begone. So ne'er begone. Nar begone. Very much like a vagrant or wandering lifestyle. Wildred. Adjective. Feeling the haunting solitude of extremely remote places, clearing in the forest, a windswept field of snow, a rest area in the middle of nowhere, which makes you feel like you've just intruded on a conversation that had nothing to do with you, where even the gravel beneath your feet and the trees overhead are holding themselves back to a pointed, inhospitable silence. From wild plus dread, pronounced Wildred. Go, or gow. Now, a hollow place in your psyche that can never be filled. A bottomless hunger for more food, more praise, more attention, more affection, more joy, more sex, more money, more hours of sunshine, more years of your life. A state of panic that everything good will be taken from you too early, which makes you want to swallow the world before it ends up swallowing you. Onomatopoeic to the sound of a devouring maw, pronounced hawk, with air drawn sharply inward through the mouth. So hawk, not gal. It's hawk. I would make a joke, but yeah, hawk. Ringlorn. Adjective. The wish that the modern world felt as epic as the one depicted in old stories and folk tales. Place of tragedy and transcendence, of oaths and omens and fates, where everyday life felt like a quest for glory, a mythic bond with an ancient past, or a battle for survival against a clear enemy, rather than an open-ended parlor game where all the rules are made up and the points don't matter. So, whoopsie. Just modern society. From Ring, a key element in many sagas and myths, like Lord of the Rings, plus Lorn, sorely missing, pronounced Ringlorn. Yeah. Sometimes I wish that we had the equivalent of fighting dragons and embarking on epic quests today, but maybe that's just a matter of my own perspective. To some people, everyone has their own dragons and everyone has their own quests. But for me, I would definitely like to see some more stuff akin to traditional fantasy. But maybe it just all has to do with creativity and imagination. Maybe you could be having an epic battle with your dog. Oh, which leads me, I'm going to digress a bit, but I went for a walk yesterday and I felt like such a Disney princess because I just walked out of the house and I was basically like greeted by 3 different dogs. Well, first walking out, I literally just stepped outside the door and this huge fluffy sheepdog just came bounding out of nowhere and just like started rubbing against my leg, and I instantly started petting it because it was so cute. Um, it had a collar, but I didn't see its owner. I was looking around for its owner, but I don't think their owner was with them. It looks like the dog probably got away or ran a bit, but I didn't get a chance to check his collar yet because it was moving around quite a lot. And eventually it started to sniff my mom's garden in the front. And I went to approach it again, but then it ran off towards the backyard, so I didn't get a chance to see its collar. But as soon as I followed it to the backyard, our neighbor's dog from behind us started barking at me, and it was a tiny, like one of those little rat dogs. And I was like, wow, okay, so we're gonna do this now. So it started to chase me. I held my ground because I felt like if I started running, it would chase me even more. So I didn't run from the dog, but it chased me up to about like a couple feet away from me, and then I backed off and went back. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not gonna obviously chase the other dog. So I continued going back to the front so I could start my walk. And then our neighbors across the street from in front of us, their daughter was just taking out their dog for a walk. And it's also like another miniature dog, tiny dog. And as I'm leaving, I'm just like walking away. And they just stroll on across the street right past me onto our lawn. And the little girl and the dog are just like looking at me. And I basically like almost lock eyes with them, and as they see me leaving, she just takes their dog to take a shit on our lawn. And I'm just like, wow, that's really bold. Or maybe she's just too young to understand that maybe that's not an okay thing to do. But um so as to say, I made sure to just text my mom later about what the neighbors were up to, and I left that up to her to handle. In my mind, I saw it just as some extra fertilizer for the lawn, but I'm sure my mom had some choice things to say to the neighbors across the street. But that was my little Disney princess moment. A lot of dogs that morning. Anyways, I don't know how I got to dogs, but moving on. Harmonoia. Now, an itchy sense of dread when life feels just a hint too peaceful. When everyone seems to get along suspiciously well with an eerie stillness that makes you want to brace for the inevitable collapse. Or burn it down yourself. It's like self-sabotage. Wow. From harmony plus paranoia. Pronounced harmonoia. Let's check real quick. Okay. I think we can finish these two and we'll be good for today. Gobo. Noun. The delirium of having spent all day in an aesthetic frame of mind, watching a beautiful movie, taking photos across the city, getting lost in an art museum, which infuses the world with an aura of meaning till every crack in the wall becomes a commitment to naturalism, and every rainbow swirling in a puddle feels like a choice. Short for go-between. In theatrical lighting, a gobo is a layer inserted into a lamp that shapes the pool of light that hits the stage. Pronounced gobo. I didn't know that before, but interesting. That's cool to know. Treachery of the common. Noun. The fear that everyone around the world is pretty much the same. That despite our local quirks, we were all mass produced in the same factory, built outward from the same generic homunculus, pre-installed with the same tribal compulsions and character effects, which would leave you out of options if you ever want to reinvent yourself, or seek out a better society on the other side of the globe. A riff on the tragedy of the commons, which is a situation where individual users acting in their own self-interest end up harming the common good, usually by depletion or pollution of resources. I actually don't really have this feeling at all. I feel like everyone's quite unique, aside from a couple shared experiences, but there will always be shared experiences. But everyone's life is completely different. Even identical twins. I've known quite a few identical twins through high school and just in life in general. They have pretty different personalities, even if they might seem similar at a first glance. It's probably more because a bias factor, because you think they look similar. But yeah. Funkenswangwurstelung. It's definitely German. Noun. The primal trance of watching a campfire in the dark. From German, Funken, spark, plus Zwangvorstellung, obsession. Pronounced Funkenzwangsvorstellung. Wow. I've had my fair share of campfires in the dark, but yeah, I would say it's quite a unique experience. There's a trance-like feeling of a campfire in the dark. Just one little light and all the shadows. It's very cool. I didn't know there was a German to describe that. Or I don't know why they use German to describe that, but that's cool. Spark obsession. It almost sounds a step away from pyromania. Very cool. Zielschmerz. Noun. The dread of finally pursuing a lifelong dream, which requires you to put your true abilities out there to be tested on the open savannah. No longer protected inside the terrarium of hopes and delusions that you started up in kindergarten and kept sealed as long as you could. German. Ziel, goal plus Schmerz, pain. Pronounced Zielschmerz. Well, you can't ever fail if you never try. That very much is true, but that shouldn't dissuade you from trying. I still think it's better to try and fail rather than to never try at all. But ideals are often different from how reality plays out. There's definitely my own fair share of things I've had a fear of pursuing just because I didn't want to fail. And if you never do it, you won't fail. But it's important to face your fears. And that's something I'm trying to apply more to my life. So yeah, Zielschmerz. Even if it might be painful. But we're going to continue on this next time. And I think that's a good stopping point for today. So thank you for reading with me. And hopefully I'll see you guys again next week or sometime sooner, maybe even later. But ideally, sometime next week. Goodbye.